I picked up a guy from a gay bar, and he was noticeably coming onto me. He then confessed that he was one of the founders of a very popular gaming company and offered me $2,000 to come up to his room. Uber drivers, what's the deepest secrets you've overheard in your car? I picked up this young overly affectionate couple that spent the entire trip making out in my backseat and telling each other that they loved each other. Cute. So I drop off the couple and head on my way to pick up my text fare. I hear a cell phone ring in my backseat, realize it's my previous rides, and pick up the phone to let them know I have it and I'll come back to drop it off. Turns out it was the guy's wife phoning to check in on him while he was on a business trip, which he was thoroughly enjoying with his mistress. One time I was driving a dude for a bit of a long trip, was gonna take around 25 to 30 minutes. He wasn't hammered, but definitely a bit drunk. It was late and he must have been feeling a bit down, so he confided in me and asked me for some advice. He told me he's madly in love with his fiancee's best friend and he couldn't back out now. He'd been with this girl for years, and engaged for one, ready to be married in a few months. It was pretty sad to hear, because it wasn't just your average story. It was filled with a lot of subtle emotional and mental anguish. The guy went through about 5 years of ups and downs with his girl, and found an innocent friend and comfort in the best friend. After a few years, he developed feelings and it was just downhill from there. Felt bad for the guy because he seemed like he was truly in love with his fiancée too, although he had strong feelings for this friend. He knew that going through with the marriage meant a lifetime of being around the friend and suppressing feelings, but also breaking it off meant that he lost the girl of his dreams. Seemed like a genuinely nice guy, and I hope he's doing okay. Picked up two dudes. They were talking about how they were going to keep hiding their relationships from their wives and children. Pretty messed up stuff. Drove Uber one night. It was pretty tame, until I picked up two guys who wanted to go to a strip club 40 miles away. As they requested an Uber Select fare, I was happy to drive that far, $80 to $100. It took them 15 minutes to get ready and into the car and they seemed cool, so I wasn't worried. As soon as we got on the freeway, the guy in the passenger seat started asking about Uber driving and things got dark. After a few minutes he started saying stuff like, "What would you do if someone just grabbed the steering wheel and ran the car into the median? And have you ever thought about what would happen if someone in the backseat tried to strangle you while you were driving?" I got a little freaked out and tried to lighten the mood by asking what they were celebrating, etc. But the one guy just kept at it. I was happy to get to the strip club and get them the hell out of the car. Bonus was the bouncer at the club gave me $40 for dropping them off there. I never drove Uber again. It wasn't so much weird as it was random, but my first night driving for Uber and Lyft, I picked up a dude at 2:30 AM that was finishing up a pub crawl. The dude was dressed in a purple dinosaur onesie and was hammered. He got in and started telling me his entire life story and how he came out to his parents and moved across the country the next day. I drove Uber in Denver for a couple months, but the singular event that forced my retirement happened on a classically Colorado night in late December of last year. Cold, snowy, everyone stoned off their butt. I wasn't planning on driving in such miserable conditions. I'm a bad enough driver as is. I have no confidence in my abilities, nor should anyone else. I find the need to mention that the only reason I Ubered people around was because I lost my job at Chick-fil-A because of some "can I speak to your manager" customer who wanted fat-free ranch. Despite my insistence, we didn't effing have fat-free ranch. Anyways, I got angry at the not so nice customer and got fired, which finally showed me that customer service probably isn't a good job choice for a loving a-hole like myself. But I'm chilling at my apartment, and the heating at my place was broken because Sean, the dumbass landlord, was too busy catching up on Game of Thrones to fix that poop. So I decide I'm available to drive this girl to the DCPA, Denver Center for the Performing Arts, just to get out of the apartment. This girl lives directly underneath me, but I've never met her before. She's a solid 8/10, curvy, blonde, about 5'2" and with the goofiest smile you'd ever see. As I'm driving her there, she starts telling me the story of why she's all alone on this chilly pre-Christmas night. Turns out, her ex-boyfriend Scott was supposed to go to this play with her tonight, but he's a major a-hole. The stories about him start off small enough. He effed her best friend, lied about it. Basic stuff, right? Not even close. Turns out he was dealing drugs from the basement of her old house, like hardcore cocaine and stuff, and got her arrested for it. Thankfully she was proven not guilty in court. The evidence was entirely circumstantial, but he had skipped town, so she was left to suffer on her own. She tells me he was abusive, beat her nightly, and tried to rape her before she broke up with him. My sympathy senses are going off the charts for her. She even sheds a few tears, apologizing for spilling her history. She asks if I want to see this show with her. She still has the extra ticket. I, of course, jump at the chance to go on a date with this hot bombshell who's probably definitely out of my league. So I agree. We park about a block away from the DCPA and have to walk the rest of the way. The snow is sprinkling around us like there's magical fairy tale stuff, and I'm getting serious vibes from her. Like I'm totally gonna F you tonight if you ask vibes. We get to our seats in the show when she asks me if I want to go backstage to meet the actresses before it starts. That's against the rules, right? Well, girl insists she knows them and it's fine. So she takes me on this shady little path backstage and pulls out a set of keys to unlock the doors. Red flags are going off. Yay. But I'm wanting to get laid, and the last thing I wanna do is piss her off. She takes me to the green room and introduces me to this dude called Scott, one of the lead actors. He looks at her and starts freaking the F out, which is when she pulls out her effing knife and stabs him in the gut. That Scott was the same Scott that broke up with her. I got the F out of there, called the cops and when everything calmed down, smoked a bowl and googled his name. Turns out, she was the drug dealer and crazy person that skipped town. He was her innocent boyfriend, who found out and ratted her out to the cops, and she wanted her revenge. She tried to pin the stabbing on me, but when the police interrogated me, they found out all about the tree fiddy that she left in my car before she left. She was actually a monster in disguise. Who knew? This was the end of my Uber career. Took this 19-year-old kid and what I assumed was his girlfriend back to her house on Pride weekend in San Francisco. They made out the whole ride. When I dropped them off, only she got out. He said, "Take me to Castro and 18th. I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I only make out with girls when I'm rolling." Never a dull moment in San Francisco. Number 1. Two girls talking about how they effed the same guy. Both agreed his genital was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. Both concluded he was gay. Number 2. Two middle-aged couples trying to agree to a foursome. Once I had an extremely drunk middle-aged couple fight for an entire 30-minute ride. They attempted to bring me into their fight many times. I just pretended like I was deaf and didn't answer when they tried to rope me into it. Two 40-something guys who I picked up from a bar were talking on a phone speaker, and they were trying to make plans with a third guy who was at a party with a bunch of drunk 12th graders. Exact words. One guy in my car asked if there was anyone younger there. Other dude said, "Dude, really?" Followed by silence. Then he said, "Effin' sweet." Not sure as there was missing context, but it sounded like there was younger teenagers there, already drunk, and these older dudes were going to pick up. Not so much secrets, as they were things people don't normally say or do in front of strangers. Picked up a divorced father whose buddy paid for his Lyft ride to the bar. Why? Because he was supposed to see his kid that evening for an overnight, but the wife had the authority to dictate the terms of him seeing his own child no matter what, and she wasn't feeling it. Granted, I definitely got one side of the story, but it was effing terrible to see a man who desperately wanted to spend time with his kid be completely blocked from it over bullshit. California had given dad so little rights, from how this guy described it, that even though he had a stable job, good house, and was willing to pay for a hotel so he and his son would stay in the town the mom lived in, it was a no-go. That was a tough one cause I was so powerless to help. Picked up a girl to take her straight from work to the hospital to see her dad. Her mom had called her work to make her end her shift early because it was serious. Her dad had cancer. I dropped her off and was like, God, I hate this job cause I'll never know how her night ended. Wrong. Next night, I'm taking people home from bars, and her two guy friends took her out to get wasted cause her dad had died. They were being drunk idiots. So when I took them to get pizza, she came outside and we talked about it a little. That was probably the one ride where I felt I had a positive impact on someone's life beyond getting them home safely. I was taking two couples home. Dropped off couple number 1 and the husband of couple number 2 was in the front seat and made a comment I didn't hear. Apparently he insulted the wife of couple number 1, his wife's BFF. The wife in couple number 2 didn't like that, so she hit him. Not like a playful slap. She struck her husband. Straight on domestic violence. I laid down the law. We're not going anywhere as this is how it's gonna be. The dude was drunk on tequila. Chick was drunk too. So the ride home was him asking me how would you feel and me saying it's not about how I feel. You two need to discuss this tomorrow when you're sober. It's weird, man, you get a passing glimpse into people's lives and loved it and hated it at the same time. My friend Ubers in my hometown picked up some really nice girls out on first Friday. They're talking about their plans for next autumn. Guy thinks he recognizes one of them. Turns out to be my younger sister and he tells me all about it. And that's how I found out my little sister was moving to Spain. I picked up two guys in downtown Los Angeles. From their conversation I gather they'd just met at the bar I picked them up from and were going home to hook up. One was younger and clean cut. The other was older and rather scruffy. So I'm driving up Main Street to the 101 and the scruffy guy starts talking about how he used to live there in the 90s and it was a whole lot scummier back then. He mentions he used to have an older boyfriend back then. The boyfriend would call the scruffy guy and tell him to walk down to the sidewalk in a tied off shirt and Daisy Dukes. Then the boyfriend would drive up in his car and the scruffy guy would lean in his window and the boyfriend would ask him how much. And the scruffy guy would get in and they'd roleplay that he was a prostitute and the boyfriend was his John. The clean cut guy kinda glossed over this and moved the conversation along. But I thought to myself, that scenario sounds hot as hell. Former Uber driver here. Picked a girl up, a sweet girl from a bar on a Wednesday night. Absolutely hammered. About 10 PM. She got into my car, apologized for being so drunk and politely asked if we could just drive around a little while, with the windows down. I was prepping for a cleaning fee, trying to drive and pull a vomit bag out of the glove box. But no, she just did that airplane thing with one hand out the backseat window. She asked me if I had ever thought about dying. To which I replied, yeah, I guess so. That's when she told me that she had cancer. It was in her brain and it was too far gone to consider chemo. I remember my heart just pounding. She told me she was dying and she was going to be okay. Tonight she was celebrating with her work friends who threw her a going away party. She told them she was taking a position abroad. I just didn't tell them that abroad was heaven. Jesus Christ. I turned off my app and cried my ass all the way home.